classmates and Dr. Johnson. I am Lenora Holmes, and I will be discussing the Enright Forgiveness Model. Dr. Robert Enright is the creator of the Enright Forgiveness Model and pioneered the scientific study of forgiveness, and he is also the founder of the International Forgiveness Institute. Dr. Robert Enright has researched, developed, and implemented forgiveness education programs for the past 30 years, and he has been called by Time magazine the forgiveness trailblazer. He believed that people can forgive if they willingly choose to do so, despite the fact that an act has and was committed. He recognizes that forgiveness can be challenging, but believes strongly that one can be taught how to execute forgiveness correctly. Dr. Enright believes that it can be a deep learning experience for those who choose to make the journey. He has a saying: forgiveness is important for our inner life communities and in our nation. Forgiveness properly practiced over time can revolutionize humanity. The forgiveness model was created to assist those who have difficulties in making peace with certain situations or problems, forgiving oneself, issues with identifying the source of the turmoil and agony that accompany dealing with unforgiveness. Many have asked questions such as: how do you forgive when it's difficult? How do I stop the resentment or the anger? What's the meaning of my pain? And what does forgiveness really mean? People will mistakenly assume that in order to forgive that they must do something impossible or that they have to reconcile with the individual. Many struggle with these assumptions primarily because most have never seen forgiveness modeled to them. Forgiveness does not mean forgetting that the offense occurred or excusing or condoning the event or the offense that happened, or believing that one should forego justice or restitution, or even suppressing the feelings and pretending that the event never happened. It's also important to understand that forgiveness does not require that the offender admits their offense, or that they ask for forgiveness, or makes restitution, or that they're willing and able to change their ways. Although when the offender responds this way, it makes it easier for an individual to entertain the thought of forgiveness. However, it is not necessary for the offended to receive this type of response in order to walk in forgiveness. The Enright Model process of forgiveness addresses four phases: 1. Uncovering phase, 2. The decision phase, 3. The work phase, 4. Deepening phase. During the uncover phase, an individual gains insight into how the offense has affected or compromised their life. This phase involves confronting and uncovering the consequences of the offense. This is done by determining who did what and to whom, and understanding the perceived offense and the nature of the event is understood. This helps the individual to understand the secondary emotions that they may be experiencing because of the offense, such as anger. During this phase, people learn that they may not be able to forgive the offense, but they can forgive the secondary or indirect effects of what they've experienced, such as anger, resentment, or emotional pain. They also learn how to identify or uncover the consequences of the offense and begin to understand the unfairness that occurred and their reaction to the event and how it has affected their lives. Many individuals who are religious can become stuck in this phase because they focus on trying to understand and have compassion for their offender, and often skip unintentionally the questions of uncovering the effects, and don't acknowledge how they were hurt or express their level of anger or shame, and they may often feel guilty for resenting the offender once they have a better understanding of their issues. I can see how a Christian who has read the scriptures in the King James Bible, which states in Matthew 6:14 and 15, "For if you forgive others their trespasses, your heavenly Father will also forgive you. But if you do not forgive others their trespasses, neither will your Father forgive your trespasses." Many believers may look to the scriptures and not address how they're feeling or their emotions. During the uncovering process, the individual learns to make connections between not forgiving and working through justifiable anger and pain that is associated with the incident, and the temporary or permanent changes that may have occurred that also include how they see God. The decision phase is when one begins to have an understanding of the nature of forgiveness and then makes a decision to commit to forgiving and be willing to forgive. The person has to decide whether they want to remain stuck in unforgiveness or make the decision to forgive. The work phase is exactly what is stated. Starting the work to forgiving in this phase, the person begins to have an understanding of the offender and begins to see them in a different light. They begin to reframe their situation and or learn to see the person in a different realm. They also work on realistic empathy and compassion and learn to bear the pain caused by the offender and learn not to deflect it onto others who didn't hurt them. For example, their children or their spouse. Finally, they learn how to give the moral gift of forgiveness, which can result in positive change. As the Bible states in the New King James Bible, in the book of Matthew 5 and 44, that states, "But I say unto you, love your enemies, bless them that curse you, do good to them that hate you, and pray for them which despitefully use you and persecute you." As I'm sure many of you can understand that this phrase can take time as one learns how to offer something good to the person who offended them, such as, say, a prayer for the individual, a smile, or something positive. The final phase is the deepening phase. In this phase, the person finds meaning in the suffering and feels more connected with others and has decreased negatively towards the situation and or the offender. They experience release from the emotions of anger, bitterness, and resentment. During this phase, individuals may discover new meaning, purpose to their life, and may learn that they also may need to ask for forgiveness from others or even the offender. Understanding the manner in which forgiveness unfolds is important, and the individual should understand the process and what they need to do to move from one point to the next. While using this model, Enright has several questions that is asked of the participant during each phase to assist them in thinking about what forgiveness is, how they have avoided feelings and avoided dealing with their anger, what hasn't worked for them in trying to forgive, what spiritual assistance do they need to help them move forward towards forgiveness, and to what extent have they recognized that they may also need forgiveness, are a few questions that are asked. The goal is to assist people to walk in forgiveness. This model can be used with both adults and children, and this model isn't necessarily spiritual or religious, but leans more on a psychological and philosophical beliefs, and yet recognizes that in order for one to walk in forgiveness, there is a spiritual element of giving and receiving, but the model does not offer assistance, but the model does offer assistance to both the spiritual and non-believer. The forgiveness model aligns with spiritual principles and a Christian worldview. I think that this model should be promoted and encouraged more and made available in more colleges and universities. I had never heard of this model during my previous educational experiences. And while looking up information regarding this model, there were other models that came up regarding forgiveness, but the information, although under different names, were very similar to the Enright model. While looking at this model, I found this philosophy to be interesting as I, like many others, have struggled with forgiveness, and I wondered how effective this would be if I incorporated some of the strategies outlined in some of the situations that I'm currently working through. My lingering question is, if the scriptures state we should forgive, why do you think people are content to wallow in self-pity when the release of forgiveness is available? Thank you for listening.